The dark web is another layer to the internet, and today we're going to look at the dark web's deadliest drug. Now, I don't know what this is. Is it actually edible or is it like something else? But we see what it is. It's a phone video. We know it's going to be good.
Isotonitazene. It's part of a whole group of substances called nitazines. And this tiny amount is enough to kill. Over the past few years, these drugs have been claiming more and more lives across the EU. A perfect storm is brewing, caused by a political power shift in Afghanistan, changing smuggling routes, and the emergence of clandestine Chinese laboratories pushing new and harder synthetic drugs. Drugs that are cheaper, sometimes openly available on the clear net, and more potent than almost anything we've seen before. Is Europe ready for what's coming?
It's a movie. What?
This is Ahmed. He's a fictional character based in a variety of reporting. And this is his farm, located in the northern Helmand region of Afghanistan. Like many others across the country, he settled a patch of desert. 10 years ago, 3 hectares cost him just $5,400. Since then, he's gradually turned this patch of arid land into a productive plot that provides for him, his wife, and their 9 children. But it wasn't easy. First, the dry earth had to be cleared and leveled. Ahmed doesn't have access to irrigation from a local water source like the Musakala River, so he also had to dig a 120-meter deep well. That cost him $3,600. Instead of relying on expensive diesel fuel to power his pumps, he invested another $10,000 in installing a solar array. He even dug a large pond to store the groundwater he'd use on his crops. With the average daily income of an Afghan farmer being about $5 to $10 US, you might well ask, how exactly did Ahmed pay for all this? Well, Ahmed grows poppies. He's the first link in the supply chain that turns this flower into opium and opium into heroin.
Oh! I'm gonna be honest, I've seen this grown in a couple of places, but legally. 10 years ago, this video said he was doing it, but wasn't the US in Afghanistan? So why did they not stop it?
Since 2003, Afghanistan has consistently produced 70% of the world's opium and up to 90% of Europe's supply. For farmers like Ahmed, it's essential for survival. Every year, he uses 2/3 of his plot to grow poppies. The rest he fills with just enough wheat to feed his family. Most years, his crop yields around 140 kilos of opium, including 20 kilos he can set aside for a rainy day. But that's all about to change. On August 15, 2021, the Taliban returned to power. 7.5 months later, they make poppy cultivation illegal.
Wait, how is that legal in the US? But it's illegal but how is it the other way around?
Some experts say they're distancing themselves from a trade they previously participated in hope of securing political recognition as well as financial and humanitarian aid. Others claim they're artificially raising prices in order to profit from their own stockpiles. Either way, people in Afghanistan are skeptical.
If you don't have enough food in your house and your children are going hungry, what else will you do? If we grew wheat instead, we won't earn enough to survive.
Okay.
This isn't the first time the Taliban have done this. After securing control of the majority of the country in 2000, they put a similar ban in place, resulting in a 90% reduction in opium cultivation in 2001. Within a year, the price for a kilo of dried opium skyrocketed from $30 US to over $300, but the shortage didn't last. Instead, the United States invaded Afghanistan. The year after that, poppy cultivation bounced back. Having lived through the Taliban's previous rise to power, Ahmed, like many farmers, anticipated the ban. The total area used for poppy cultivation grows by 32%. Farmers are allowed to harvest and sell their opium before a full ban comes into effect. As a result, the 2022 crop is the 3rd largest since records began. Opium stores swelled, including Ahmed's. By November, prices are as high as $475 per kilo. Farmers' income from opium sales triples. The UNODC, United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime, estimates that opiate stocks in Afghanistan total up to 13,200 tons that year. 60% is likely held by organized crime groups, with the rest belonging to farmers. All in all, it's probably enough to meet the demand for Afghan opiates until 2027. For Ahmed, that's plenty of time to wait for the ban to lift or loosen and for things to go back to normal.
But how? I still don't understand. How is that guy still growing it? Because right now, Afghanistan is under Taliban since 2021, so I'm confused.
For experts in Europe, it's time to jump into action. By the way, Europe uses daylight savings time in the summer. In and of itself, a highly controversial topic. We're out here researching anxiety-inducing topics, and the sun is just there. Absolutely, offensively bright right outside at 4 a.m. Thankfully, there's Manta Sleep, today's sponsor.
Yay, I love you, phone. I'm going to skip your sponsor, though.
Hi, I'm Daniel Brombacher. I'm the director of the Europe Observatory of Organized Crime at the Global Initiative Against Transnational Organized Crime. We provide analysis to the broader public, to governments, to interested partners about what's happening on the ground in organized crime.
For Daniel and his colleagues, Afghanistan's poppy ban is deeply concerning.
Everyone in Europe was afraid of a potential influx in the traditional heroin market that is linked to Afghanistan with synthetic opioids.
In the past, heroin shortages in European countries like Estonia, Hungary, or Finland have led users to start consuming synthetic alternatives like fentanyl or cathinones. When the heroin supply drops and user demand stays consistent, organized crime groups take advantage of these supply shocks to introduce more profitable drugs.
So we thought, okay, we have to look into this issue and we need to monitor illicit markets to see, do synthetic opioids actually show up there? Have they maybe already entered supply chains for illicit drugs in Europe? And what are the dynamics behind this market, if there is any market already?
While many questions remain, one thing becomes clear. This ban is different. The Afghan poppy industry doesn't bounce back like it did the first time. Ahmed's home province of Helmand, which accounted for over half of Afghanistan's poppy cultivation, is rendered virtually poppy-free. Europe's heroin supply is almost entirely cut off at the source. At this point, you might assume that Europe's drug scene would be flooded with synthetic alternatives. But the flood never comes.
So the heroin market has actually never been sustainably disrupted. Massive heroin markets like here in Germany are still readily supplied, most probably because of existing stockpiles of heroin and opium that you would have in Afghanistan and along the traditional trafficking routes.
Stockpiles of opium from farmers like Ahmed are softening the blow. Heroin purity in Europe has generally plummeted and can range from 5 to 40%, but prices and availability have remained relatively stable. So far, there's no sign of a drastic impact like the ones experts warned about, but that shouldn't create a false sense of security.
There's a lot of guessing around that, but let's say if heroin continues to be scarce and maybe the stockpiles are depleted at some point, then yes, we may have a way stronger impact than we would think of now.
So we asked ourselves, what happens if the situation gets worse? Compared to the US, Europe hasn't had an opioid crisis. The first wave of the American epidemic was supply-driven. It started when pharmaceutical opioids like OxyContin were aggressively marketed and overprescribed. The second wave came when these prescriptions were largely cut off, pushing former patients to start using heroin.
Oh, in my head I was thinking, why do you want the supply to be there? Like, it's used illegally. I keep forgetting that these things are used to legal medicines as well.
This snowballed into the third and deadliest wave, when fentanyl entered the drug supply. Europe largely avoided this path through stricter prescription practices, stronger, more socially oriented healthcare, better treatment, and harm reduction services. For over 3 decades, fentanyl's presence in Europe has remained small and geographically limited. But now there are new challenges. It looks like Afghan heroin isn't coming back, and flexible competitors are quick to fill the gaps. Clandestine drug labs in China, India, and Russia produce an array of synthetic opioids, drugs like fentanyl and nitazines. At least 21 EU member states have already found nitazines in their drug supply. Nitazines often contaminate drugs like heroin or oxycodone, and sometimes more common drugs like cocaine, Xanax, ketamine, and ecstasy. In the UK, they've even been found in vape liquids and illegal nasal sprays. So far, relatively few deaths seem to be linked to nitazines, just a few hundred in most countries. But these numbers might not be entirely accurate.
In Germany, last year and this year, we have had the historically highest numbers of overdose deaths. These numbers are far away from what has happened in the US, but still they are high comparatively. But then if you only conduct an autopsy in 50% of the cases, and that has been the case in Germany, then how do you actually know what people took? The opioid quick scan would not differentiate or would not tell you this was heroin or this was oxycodone or this was nitazine. So we don't actually know how it's going.
In September 2024, the director of the European Agency for Drugs issued a call to action. He explicitly warned against the very real risk of remaining complacent during this buffer period. Without a visible crisis like the one in the US, governments aren't forced to prepare. This false sense of security is only made worse by the novelty of nitazines, substances that most experts don't know they should test for or how to effectively treat. Names that most people, including you, have probably never heard before this video.
Okay.
Drugs that seemingly came out of nowhere. Or did they?
Wait, so you're telling me that you need the thing to be in your country so that people don't do these ones? Because I'm still confused.
This is the Pharmaceutical Research Laboratory of chemical company Ciba in Basel, Switzerland. Here, chemists are experimenting with a largely unexplored compound, benzimidazole. It was first synthesized in 1872, but its therapeutic potential wasn't recognized until the 1950s. Intrigued by the compound, the Ciba team conducts some novel experiments. They focus on creating benzimidazole derivatives as opioid painkillers. They take a benzimidazole ring as a scaffold and bind an ethylamine at its first position and a benzyl group at its second position. This way, they produce 2-benzyl benzimidazole. With only minor structural modifications to this scaffold, the chemists can produce a wide variety of analog substances. That means they each have a unique chemical structure, but potentially similar effects. The team has successfully synthesized a new class of opioids, broadly labeling them nitazines. But they quickly realize there's a problem. The chemists conduct a toxicity test. They test how many milligrams of morphine per kilo of body weight is needed to kill half a test population of mice. It's 200 milligrams. Then they conduct the same test using the nitazine compound. A 1 milligram dose does the job.
Huh?
The drug they've created is 200 times more potent than morphine and 5 to 10 times more potent than fentanyl. Some analogs are over 40 times more potent. The team agrees that this extreme potency makes it especially difficult to dose. This leads to what the medical field calls a narrow therapeutic window. One small miscalculation and the patient can become addicted or die. Its unique chemical structure further complicates medical use as it behaves differently than other opioids. When certain analogs like isotinitazine degrade in the body, they release an active metabolic compound in the brain that's even more potent than the parent drug, meaning the drug's effects last an unusually long time and intensify before fading. But that's not all. The molecule unbinds very slowly from the opioid receptors in the brain. In turn, nitazines have a reduced sensitivity to life-saving drugs like naloxone. Naloxone is a compound typically used to reverse the effects of an opioid overdose. It does this by displacing the opioid molecule at the brain's receptors, and it's effective for morphine, heroin, and even fentanyl. But nitazines make this process mechanically difficult, and multiple doses are often required to stop someone from slipping back into overdose. Simply put, it's stronger, harder to treat, and it lasts much longer than other opioids. The scientists shelved the project. Nitazines are never approved for medical use. The findings are published in medical journals, which fade into scientific obscurity. History became legend. Legend became myth. And for 7 decades, nitazines passed out of all knowledge. Until 2019. The opioid epidemic in the US has been fueled by an influx of precursor chemicals coming from China. They're usually transported to Mexico, where they're turned into fentanyl and smuggled over the border. Trump has blamed the Chinese government for the crisis and partially used it to justify higher and higher tariffs.
They are doing that, yes, but they are paying right now a 20% tariff because of fentanyl, based on the fact that they're sending fentanyl to Mexico and Canada.
The CPC claims fentanyl is an America problem.
我们多次表明， 芬太尼是美国的问题，不是中国的问题。
Some fentanyl analogs were banned in 2015, and a more complete ban followed in 2019. That year, China added fentanyl, its analogs, and a variety of precursor chemicals to their list of controlled substances as an act of good faith. On paper, this was a good move, but in practice it meant that the companies making fentanyl were pushed into a perpetual cat-and-mouse game with the government. If they couldn't sell fentanyl anymore, they simply had to look for new, unregulated synthetic drugs.
Oh.
This is a clandestine drug lab in Zhengzhou, China. These chemists are poking around in old medical journals trying to find new opioids they can synthesize. Eventually, they stumble on papers about nitazines, which tick all the boxes. It's a largely unheard of compound, it's easy to synthesize, and it's extremely potent. And more importantly, it's not yet banned by the government. They've struck synthetic gold. Within a few months, small packages of nitazine analogs start hitting countries all around the world. So just how easy is it to buy one of the most dangerous drugs on Earth? We wanted to find out. Warning, do not try this at home.
In simple words, they are buying nitazines and now selling them in the market instead of the ones. I'm confused. Is it for medical use now or not? But the fact that it's being sold on the dark web, you know what it is for.
Warning, do not try this at home. Step 1. Do 15 minutes of research to find an article that mentions online B2B marketplaces with potential listings from Chinese vendors selling nitazines. Step 2. Go to the B2B platform and search for nitazines. See that the listings with the keyword have been removed. Step 3. Search for knowing it's a common analog found on the street. Immediately find listings for multiple vendors. Step 4. Download Telegram and contact the number listed on the photo of a bag of nondescript drugs. Step 5. Within 12 hours, get an answer. How much you want to buy? Smiley face. Clarify that you want to order a test sample and have it shipped to Europe. Step 6. Find out that it will cost $160, including shipping with either UPS, FedEx, or DHL. Step 7. Send them an address and pay with their link. Congratulations.
Is it
you now
that
bought
simple?
one of the most powerful opioids in the world. And if by any chance your package is intercepted, there's a reshipment guarantee.
What?
5 stars on the flag, 5 stars for the customer service. We didn't do that last step, by the way, so the stuff never arrived.
Yep, you would say that. But is it that simple because it's legal? But how is it
we
legal
were
then?
Casually offered kilos of isotonitazines by this vendor, enough to harm a lot of people.
Europe seizes maybe 10 to 20 kilos a year, while at the same time we seize 400 tons of cocaine a year. That's a big difference. But still, with 10 kilos of nitazines, you could kill the whole city of Berlin.
Yeah.
The kilo we could have bought easy peasy could theoretically kill well over 100,000 people.
Huh?
By 2025, the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime was tracking 26 distinct nitazine analogs in 30 countries around the world. And just like fentanyl in the US, nitazines are likely here to stay, or they might be replaced by yet another novel substance as the game of cat and mouse continues.
Oh, so they're basically constantly coming up with new substance because it's not banned yet, and then just try and sell it to the market for people that are addicted.
Are declared illegal, so labs look for new, unregulated alternatives.
Yep.
For organized crime groups, the upside of selling potent synthetics is simply too high. Trafficking 1 kilogram can be equivalent to trafficking 50 kilograms of heroin. Shipments automatically become smaller, which makes them easier to hide in the mail. And it's more than just logistics. Once criminal organizations invest in synthetic opioid infrastructure and expertise, economic logic suggests they won't go back to the less efficient, higher risk, and lower margin heroin trade. On top of that, synthetic opioid production isn't affected by agricultural vulnerabilities. No weather patterns, no growing seasons, no political instability in source countries. Production can happen year-round in clandestine laboratories, and you can set those up just about anywhere, using precursor chemicals sourced from the global chemical industry. Even if the Taliban lifted their ban and Afghan opium production rebounded, the superior profitability of synthetics would likely win out. So, is Europe prepared?
Yeah, this is my question. What do you do with these pills? Because surely the people that want to get high off of it, they can only experience it once, right?
Let's start with law enforcement. Currently, their focus is elsewhere.
Cocaine was basically conquering all over Europe. So everyone was very afraid about cocaine. If you want to put it like briefly, you would say European law enforcement authorities were looking west, right? So where the cocaine's coming from, but not looking east, where opioids are coming from and heroin.
Without bodies piling up because of synthetic opioids, there's little incentive for law enforcement to allocate significant resources to stop them.
And when you compare, for example, seizures, right? Seizures are always a good expression of not what's actually happening, but a good expression of law enforcement priorities. Last year in Germany, we have, I think, 24 tons of cocaine being seized, but 140 kilos of heroin. That is a very small number if you consider the size of the German heroin market, but it's simply because no one was looking for it. So when they would look for it, they would find it.
Even if it was a priority, it's unclear how much of the synthetic opioid supply law enforcement could realistically curb. Picture an hourglass. At each stage, the width of the hourglass represents how many people are involved. At the top, hundreds of thousands of farming households grow coca plants, mostly in Colombia, Peru, and Bolivia. Then the funnel narrows. Far fewer people refine coca leaves into cocaine. Fewer still are the smugglers and top-level importers who move it into consumer countries. This is the bottleneck. At the bottom, the hourglass widens back out. The number of wholesale dealers increases, and they branch out to countless street-level sellers. Each hand it passes through increases the drug's price, until finally it reaches the consumer. But synthetic opioids like nitazines are reaching users in much more direct ways.
It's important to understand that this is not the traditional organized crime you may have in mind, running this market with synthetic opioids. This is not like Ndrangheta or Mexican cartels or Colombian cartels. This is mostly an online phenomenon. So this market only becomes physical the moment the drug reaches the user.
It's shockingly easy to order these substances online, so easy that it flattens the supply chain almost entirely. Producers in China mail small packages directly to street-level dealers and even end users.
When basically the whole supply is coming by mailing shipment somewhere from China within millions of parcels coming from China every day to Europe. And you're looking for, what, like 100 grams of fentanyl?
Yeah, it's insane. It's impossible to find.
Even a kilo of nitazines, it's impossible.
Yep.
This also means that doors open to an entirely new kind of end user.
There is a risk, and there's a growing risk, that on these basically completely uncontrolled online markets, these substances find their way into drug user communities, and especially non-traditional drug user communities. So it's young people that are very absent from these traditional street markets for heroin that we have had in Europe.
According to Dr. Arne Christian Skulberg from Oslo University Hospital in Norway, there have been multiple cases of young people ordering a pill online to check it out, taking it in their room, and being found dead by their parents.
Okay.
Synthetic opioids like nitazines are sometimes bought and used knowingly, often by experimental users who like to try new highs. But often, nitazines are simply hidden in other substances. Users seek out prescription medications like OxyContin or Xanax, which they assume were produced by pharmaceutical companies. Dealers take advantage of this trust to create and sell counterfeit pills which don't contain these drugs at all. But why would they do that?
Why would you even contaminate, or why would you even lace another product with something so potent that there's risk of actually killing your customers, especially if they have a very low tolerance for
Literally
opioids.
ending your customer, bro.
And the question is not so easy to answer, and it's a lot of guessing, but we assume that basically with a very little amount of a synthetic opioid like nitazines, you can convert an incredible high amount of useless, cheap material into a highly potent drug.
In short, it's cheap. Press a bunch of junk with a teeny tiny amount of some nitazine analog, and ta-da! You have pills that get people crazy high. If one of these pills contains just a few salt-sized grains too much, it's instant death. But hey, the margins, man.
Oh, so basically not every customer is dying because some pills are made properly, but some are not. I just find people that take any type of drugs insane, but this is crazy. Like, you're going to this level. Consumer is the problem.
Drug busts and arrests often do little to curb supply or improve the health of user communities. That's where prevention, treatment, and education come into play. On the streets, heroin users are being effectively warned about contaminated drug supplies thanks to the work of harm reduction services.
Every time there is a batch of heroin that is contaminated, there's warnings, there's information. basically traditional heroin user community is a street level community, and it's accessible for street workers for information, for awareness raising, so that works quite well.
But these services aren't available everywhere, and they're
Yep.
rarely able to help users who buy their drugs online from the privacy of their bedrooms. Across Europe, drug consumption rooms, needle clinics, and substitute programs are somewhat accessible, but still limited. They're known to help traditional drug users, but they won't be as effective for a teenager who buys an anti-anxiety pill online, accidentally encounters nitazines, and immediately overdoses. Another challenge is to fight the current blind spot in detection. Toxicology tests used across Europe were designed to detect traditional opioids like heroin, but nitazines are structurally distinct, meaning standard screenings simply don't register them. Conventional fentanyl test strips are equally useless. Post-mortem examinations also routinely miss nitazines. This leads health officials to underestimate their presence until a series of suspicious deaths forces a closer look. Beyond detection, Europe needs modern alarm systems. Wedanos in Wales and The Loop in England test drugs that are sent in anonymously and provide alerts about contaminated batches. These services are accessible to the public, but even today, relatively few people use them. Some countries have started to deploy wastewater analysis as an early warning system. They use it to detect nitazene metabolites in communities, hopefully before overdoses occur. But these services remain rare and isolated to a handful of nations. Another challenge is getting first response drugs like naloxone into the hands of the public. It's less effective against nitazines than it is fentanyl, but it's still crucial to saving lives. Over-the-counter naloxone is available in only 5 countries: Denmark, France, Italy, Sweden, and most recently, Germany. In all others, it's only available with a doctor's prescription, so far fewer people have access. At the end of the day, there's a lot more to be done. Most emergency services haven't adopted nitazene-specific treatment protocols. Law enforcement still lacks the intelligence infrastructure to intercept small packages in the mail. And, perhaps most critically, awareness campaigns have largely failed to reach non-opioid users. Not enough young Europeans know about this trend. They simply don't know that a pill or powder they order somewhere online could be laced with a ridiculously deadly lab-made substance. There is a silver lining. Experts like Daniel and his colleagues are on a mission.
What we do as an organization, we make organized crime visible. We research it, we report about it in order to bring it to the attention of the broader public, to governments, to authorities, in order to bring it on the agenda, in order to trigger reactions in making basically the life more complicated for organized crime, because in a setting where they're invisible, they're living their best life, and we want to change that.
One thing we can all do is help to raise awareness. If you know someone who might be at risk, make sure they know about the dangers of nitazines. Tell them to get their drugs tested if they can. If they go to certain parties, tell them to carry naloxone whenever possible. And of course, there is help out there for people who struggle with substance abuse.
Why not just teach the people that are young and doing this that this is not okay, do not do this, do not do any sort of pills, do not do anything. There's a reason why these things are banned and illegal.